Hello, I'm Tom Parker and welcome to Voices from the CEPS Ideas Lab. In this episode, I spoke to the European Union's Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos. Commissioner Kos is a Slovenian diplomat and politician who previously served as both an ambassador to Germany and Switzerland. She took up her new position as Commissioner for Enlargement in December 2024, where she now works with candidate and potential candidate countries on their plans to join the EU. During our interview, we discussed the geopolitics around Ukraine and its potential accession to the EU, as well as what the bloc needs to do to remain a strong political player on the global stage. Since we recorded this, there have been peace summits held in London and Brussels, which saw the European powers rally around President Zelensky, as well as a ceasefire negotiation in Saudi Arabia between Ukrainian and American delegates. Given the fast-evolving landscape, Commissioner Kos offers an insightful lens to the complexities of enlargement plans for the EU and potential members like Ukraine. I hope you enjoy the episode. Well, welcome, Commissioner Kos. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
The pleasure is on my side too. It's really nice and I'm curious what we'll talk about.
Well, we've got some big topics to talk about, and I actually want to start by looking back a bit, because since the start of the European Union with 6 member states, it's now at 27. I want to get an understanding, if we're reflecting back, on what enlargement means to you today.
You know, it's a very interesting question because I've always somehow felt the enlargement, even being outside the European Union. I grew up in Yugoslavia. This country doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But, you know, I grew up in the communist system, but of course I grew up 15 kilometers away from the Austrian border, so we could see what is happening. It was not beside the Iron Curtain because, you know, the borders have been open, so we could travel across the border nearly every day, and I've done this many times with my bicycle. But later on, when I went to work as a journalist, my profession is journalism, to work at the Voice of Germany, Deutsche Welle, I went actually out of Yugoslavia and came back very soon in the independent Slovenia. So, you know, these times were historical times. When we speak about today's time being historical, I felt at that time was historical too, meaning the Berlin Wall fell, Soviet Union disappeared, Yugoslavia disappeared, my country became independent, reunification or unification of Germany. So much going on in the sense, and for me, you know, the enlargement or becoming a member of the EU meant for my country actually the biggest wish. You know, when we decided to become independent in 91, then the next step immediately has been we want to become a member of the EU and a member of NATO. So I could see, you know, with different enlargement processes, what does it mean? You know, suddenly, you know, when I went to Germany for the first time as journalist, there were borders Slovenia-Austria, then Austria-Germany. And we had different currencies. We had the dinar in Yugoslavia, shilling in Austria, German marks, and so on. So slowly or per, those borders have disappeared. We got the same currency. And now, as a commissioner for enlargement, I help other countries to be able to become a member of the EU. Isn't this great?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is that actually, when we're looking back at the history of it, in the last couple of decades, there hasn't been as much of a growth, and at the moment with Ukraine, Moldova, the discussions around enlargement here, there's obviously a lot of geopolitics surrounding it, and so that makes it a different lens to be involved in the enlargement discussion.
You're right. You know, the big explosion of enlargement has been in 2004, when also my country Slovenia became a member. But this huge enlargement has been actually answered to the end of the Cold War. And meaning, how can now Europe develop in the sense of going to the east, meaning accepting new candidate countries from the eastern part of Europe, which wasn't possible before at all. Most of those countries have lived behind the Iron Curtain. So it was huge for that time, 10 countries. Then in 2007, Bulgaria, Romania, 2013, Croatia, and now for the last 12 years, nothing. So we could see similarities. At that time, it was the end of the Cold War. And now, you know, if you see why Ukraine, Moldova want to become a member of the EU, or why even Georgia is a candidate country, because they wanted to belong to a community of values and democracy, and which is the European Union. Of course, there is also the economic part, but seeing those countries or their will to become a part of the EU, and this is actually the paradox, started the war.
Yeah.
In Ukraine, because you know when we have signed the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement with Ukraine, with Georgia, and with Moldova, we actually didn't expect that they will apply. You know, when I talked to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, he told me that when the war started in 22 in February, they were in the bunker, and in the second evening of the war, they decided in the bunker that they will apply for the EU. So it wasn't planned for years and years before. Meaning that with the enlargement today, we somehow again are answering to the historic momentum, which is Europe can become bigger and stronger. And what I've said before, or just ignition, we have also started, for instance, now to talk to Iceland. Iceland has been a candidate country before, and we have already closed 11 chapters in the past. Then they decided they don't want to go on anymore. But now they would love to, and the government decided that they will have a referendum if they will go on with the negotiations or not. But talking to their people, you know, I asked them why. Why now? And they told me because we want to belong to a community of values and democracy. And I think it's so great that in these turbulent times, there are countries or people or states who see our European Union really as a community of values. And this is actually why we have been established.
Absolutely. Well, I want to focus on Ukraine. And President von der Leyen recently said in Kyiv that with the current, I suppose, accession and hitting certain targets, Ukraine could potentially become a part of the EU before 2030.
Yeah.
But what needs to be done not only by Ukraine, but also by the EU in order to achieve this?
Oh, I would work night and day that this would happen.
It's not an easy question.
Not easy at all, but this could happen still in the mandate of this commission. So, you know, when I was at the Munich Security Conference, I was talking to some American congressmen and senators, and they told me, but you know, if you want Ukraine in the EU, take them in tomorrow. Said, it doesn't work. It doesn't work like this.
No.
What do I want to say? It's a long process. We call it the accession process or negotiating process, meaning that you can only become a member of the EU if you fulfill some criteria, or if your, let's say, legislation is 100% aligned with the European one. So it's a tough work, meaning that the will and geopolitics, you know, today some people say, but you know, it is a geopolitical situation would mean that you get Ukraine in immediately. I would love to do this if it would be possible, but it's not. So they have to, the geopolitics and the political will is not enough. So they have to deliver, they have to prepare their country that it will be able to survive on the European internal market and build up the institutions which will enable Ukraine to really be a part of the European democracy and value system. And this cannot happen in one night. But they are doing really great. You know, if you consider, for the first time in the history of the EU, we are negotiating with a country which is at war.
Yes.
Has never happened before. So they are fighting the war. They are fighting also for Europe, but on the same side, they are doing the reforms. You know, there is an anecdote when I visited Kiev on the first day of my mandate, December the 1st. Mr. Zelensky, the president, you know, asked me or told me, you know, we would like to open all the clusters next year, meaning this year. And you know, the first time I said, okay, but you know, it is a lot of work. And then he mentioned it for the second time. So I didn't react because I would have tell him, you know, that it doesn't work so quick.
Sure.
But then when he said for the first time, said, but we want to open all the clusters, said, but you know, Mr. President, is not only about opening, it's also about closing. But still, very much important opening, and I hope that we will be able to open 3 clusters in the first half of the year. It could even happen all the clusters in this year, but then, of course, we will be able to close. And what is happening also on our side, you know, somehow this huge will and willingness to reform Ukrainian economy and system forces us to work 2 to 3 times quicker than we have done this in the past. You know, that's why I believe it is really, really possible. But, and I would like to stress this very much, you know, entering in the EU or the accession process, it is not just the project of the government or of the parliament where the reforms have to go through. It should be a project of the whole society, meaning that, you know, the civil society organizations should be included, that actually every city, every village, every citizen would know what is it about. And this is what actually we plan to do, but not only with the Ukraine, with all the candidate countries.
Absolutely. A lot of people discuss, especially around Ukraine, that part of the discussion is around security, but that doesn't necessarily mean defense and security because they're a country at war. There's financial, there's sort of economic security as well, and that there needs to be reforms on both sides, as you were touching on.
But you have started to know, or you mentioned one very important part, and this is, what is the European project or enlargement about? It is not only about the economy, of course, it is not only about economy, meaning, you know, how to bring them in the sense of that they would be value added, if I use this economic term, for the European Union.
Yeah.
So, and if I speak, you know, about how the EU went through different stages. For instance, when Slovenia decided until 2004, when we decided to want to become a member of the EU, it was pretty easy. If a candidate country fulfills the criteria, it can get in. After this, and especially after Romania and Bulgaria joined, the EU went into the mode of perhaps we are not ready to take new candidates, because we have to go more into ourselves. Are we capable of having this huge number of the member states? Today, we have a different situation. Even if a candidate country fulfills the criteria, is willing to become a member, even if the EU is ready to get them on board, we have disruptive external forces who would like to see us fail.
Yeah.
And this is completely new situation in the history. We see it in Georgia. You know, it is still a candidate country, but at standstill. They don't want to do with us anymore. Then we fight in Moldova, and we fight in Ukraine. Fighting, when I say fighting, is just not military, but fighting the disinformation, fighting the hybrid threat. So the environment for enlargement has changed quite a lot.
Actually, I want to, especially in your speech, you mentioned Moldova as a great example of how you're treating the current format of accession into enlarging the EU. Can you give a little bit more detail on how that's working?
I would be happy to do this. You know, Moldova, we haven't started yet. You know, I hope we will open soon the first cluster, which is fundamentals, but they are very good students. You know, they ask me, just tell us what to do and we will do it and even more. So this is their attitude. I like it a lot. And why are they doing this? You know, they see their future in Europe. They have a huge border with the already EU, which is Romania, and Romania helps a lot. But they also have a border with the Ukraine. And they have the issue with the Transnistria, which is a part of the country who actually didn't want to go the way Moldova went. went. But today we see, slowly we are doing some steps also in this geopolitical sense. For instance, when I've been there at the beginning of April, I have signed with the President Sandu a letter of intent to integrate their energy market completely in the European one, which would mean that they are independently and they are so much connected with the European electricity and energy market, they will never be blackmailed through Russia. But also the political part, we are talking to Transnistria. And for instance, when I was there, for the first time in the last 30 years, people in Transnistria were able to see Moldovan television. And for me, coming from journalism, this is wow, huge that actually through this geopolitical moments and our, I would say, bold actions from the side of the European Commission, we have been able to do this. So I'm sure that Moldova will soon open all the clusters, and if it goes on like this, perhaps we will even be able to finish the negotiations until the end of, before I end my mandate.
Well, let's hope so. Before we leave, and as a final question, in your speech you talk about strength as well, and you say that the EU can be as powerful as it dares to be. How can you assure boldness, given the current geopolitical climate, given everything we've been discussing?
Yeah. Europe is really something special, or European is really something special. We have 450 million people. We are economically strong. We haven't developed, let's say, the security part or defense, that part so much. I was telling at the debate that I grew up in the times when we said, no arms, peace is everything which is important. Why to invest money in the defense? So peace will be forever. And, then it happened first in we had war in my country, Yugoslavia. Now we have it in Ukraine. We have many strong states in the European Union, and sometimes we do not work together as we could. Germany is powerful, France is powerful, but being together, we can be even more powerful. And perhaps, what has happened in the last day has been kind of push to all of us that, come on, we should stick together, we should decide together. It won't be easy because, there are some different ideas, but this diversity in the European Union, also diversity of ideas, is something what really I like a lot. So no, not a problem if you have a different idea, but let's sit down and talk and find the best solution, not for your country, not for but for the European Union. This is what I would really love to see.
Well, what a brilliant sentiment to end this on. Commissioner Kos, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and let's do the best possible for our Europe. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you. Bye-bye.